Emancipation is long overdue, so it becomes procrastination, cause freedom is within you. For some reason we think we're free, so we'll never be, because we haven't recognized slavery. You still a slave, look at how you behave, debating on where and when and how and what master gave.
Hello everyone and welcome to This Week in Tyranny, the most hardcore news show on earth. This is a weekly show about authoritarianism, government overreach, and global injustice, and I am your host, Conrad Rogas, reminding you that if tyranny is not at your doorstep, that's because there's someone in the street keeping it at bay. And this is episode 23. Today is Saturday, May 13th, 2023. Let's jump right into the topics. And what are the topics? Well, let me say this. I don't pick and choose my stories on this show. This Week in Tyranny does not have a set narrative, although I try to analyze things at a perspective of natural law, but I take in the information that comes in of what happens throughout the week, and then as a picture forms, then I go in that direction, and that's how the themes come up. Last week it was the transgender bills that were happening in Florida, and this week it is going to be about depictions of extreme violence and gore. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Obviously not a topic I want to talk about, especially because it's going to involve not only children but animals, right? So that's fun, right? So not a very fun episode, not a very fun topic to talk about. What I really want to talk about, what's fun for me to talk about, is to talk about government, right? To talk about human rights, individual rights, where I could just rattle off, 1, 2, 3 quickly, like in a scientific format, a very lay out the philosophy in a scholarly scientific way. Boom, boom, talk about natural law, individual rights, and we're on to the next thing. That's what I really enjoyed doing. But the last few episodes, these aren't the topics that are coming up. It's these type of topics that are coming up. Not very enjoyable, but it's very apropos, it's very relevant to talk about it because this brings up the causal factors of tyranny. I talk about government tyranny, I talk about government overreach, right? But this definitely is about global injustice, but it's also about the causal factors of tyranny. Not only our ignorance of natural law and individual rights, but really the messed up parts of our psychology, the inner psychological demons of the human species. These are the causal factors of tyranny. Parental abandonment, child abuse, unprocessed trauma, traumatic events, PTSD, sexual abuse. These are the causal factors of the tyranny we have. And these are the certain things that have happened this week that have to be addressed. And if we don't address them, not only will we never have freedom, we don't deserve freedom. So I'm going to talk about it because I have to talk about it, right? It's about hard work and sacrifice. So after I already recorded last week's episode, actually it was before I even recorded it, the mass shooting happened in Allen, Texas, which I'm going to talk about. Of course, my episode was already finished, so I didn't just throw it on there. So it's really a result of the past 8 days since I recorded the last episode. And in those last 8 days, I've seen things on Twitter, and really on Twitter is where you find this stuff, and on the internet, where there was imagery and videos and stories of extreme violence that happened lately. And these are stories of extreme violence, and where does extreme violence comes from? It comes from extreme self-hatred and moral degradation, and those are two of the things that cause tyranny. How can you even be in tyranny? How can you be enslaved by a ruling class? Well, you have to have low self-respect, low self-esteem, and really it comes down to self-hatred. You can only really be a slave for a prolonged period of time if you really buy the master's mindset of how they talk about you and what they think of you. So self-hatred is one, and then what I call moral degradation, which is really, maybe it would be better to call it moral disintegration. Right, the breaking and falling apart and forgetting of morality, not knowing what morality is, what is the right way to live, why should we live a certain way, where is the respect and dignity, okay? So I'll go back to these things, but I'll use the stories to explain them. As I mentioned, the mass shooting in Allen, Texas, the mass shooter, I believe it was 8 people that died. He just took out his rifle and shot several people in the mall in Texas. And the shooter's name was Mauricio Garcia. And I've done a bit of research about just basically what are the motives, what kind of mass shooting this was, what was this guy thinking, Of course, I'm going to analyze the psychological mindset. And he actually wrote a diary, not a manifesto, but he kept a diary. So he made it very clear what his mindset was. The title of this diary was Diary of a Psychopathic Child. So psychopathy, self-proclaimed. And basically what this guy, the news reported that he had a patch that said RWDS, which means Right Wing Death Squad. Then there's an image, you find out he's got the swastika, right? So he's a neo-Nazi. He's got that ideology. Now, of course, this seems like it's a bit weird or ironic because Mauricio Garcia, like his name suggests, is of Mexican and Hispanic descent, right? So he's not your typical white supremacist. He's actually a Mexican white supremacist. So in his diary and what he writes, he talks about how he talks about his white supremacist ideology, basically about the Western Aryan man being superior, them supposed to be dominating the world, talking about things like, the birth rates of the white race is going down and the Aryan race must rise up. These are the things he says. Again, I'm not claiming anything. I'm just saying what he says. Okay. Things like the Great Replacement and so forth. He quoted something Nick Fuentes said about Mexican people being actually of a white ethnicity and not viewing themselves as a minority. All this stuff. I'm not going to get into it. The racial illusions, the illusions of race, are a thing I don't get into. That is just like a religious belief. I'll just talk about race. What race is this? What race is like that? It's actually branching off of those very satanic ideologies of, eugenics, social Darwinism, the same stuff that led to the Holocaust and all kinds of genocides in the past, and the things that lead to tyranny, is this false belief that when a person is born, because of their race or because of their genetics, they are predisposed to being a certain way. Now, this is, of course, a big lie. This is a big lie, and if you think you're born a certain way because you're born in a certain race or in a certain nation, of course then you don't explore the psychological dynamics, which I'm going to get to. One of the things that came out is his voicemail, Mauricio Garcia, the shooter. If you call him, they thought it was like, the news articles said that there was a baffling voicemail, and they didn't understand why his voicemail was like this. So what his voicemail is when you called him, the mass shooter, you could actually find it online. It's basically saying something along the lines of, hey, you've reached Maurice. If you're an ex-girlfriend of mine, you owe me. If you're a friend, you owe me money. If you're a girl, I don't have any money. If you're a debt collector, then I definitely don't have any money. If you're a friend, send me money. If you're my family, just talking about money, money, money. And people thought this was weird, like it didn't make sense, but it's actually exactly what it sounds like. This is kind of the simple-minded ideology of many people. They really just care about money, and that's why he was a simple guy. He was a simple little broken boy. That's why he joined the army, right? This guy was formerly in the army, and that's why he was a security guard. Being an army and security guard, talking about this, the same kind of stuff that makes you a white supremacist, a nationalist. All these poisonous ideologies, they're the same poisonous ideologies. They're the same kind of psychological dynamics that make you join the army. Okay, and they give you those ideologies. And his diary, when you read it, just shows a weak little boy trapped in a 33-year-old's body. Being confused, being racist. He said actually in his diary that when he was in the army in boot camp, he befriended somebody who was like actual white supremacist, who was a white guy. And he actually said that guy that he befriended, the white supremacist, said that, man, compared to me, I'm not even racist. Saying this is how racist he actually was, even though he was Hispanic, right? And of course this is the case, because who can hate anybody more than self-hatred is the biggest type of hatred. What hates a race the most? Well, the other people in that race. Your own people will always do the worst to you. Now, this is said in the Bible, right? That could only happen to a prophet in only his own nation. A prophet could be treated this way. I'm paraphrasing that portion out of the Bible, right? And that's what it is. Just a confused, self-hating racist. That's what it is. That's what creates people like this. That's what creates soldiers and police. Obviously, there are different levels to it, right? Not everybody who joins the military is aware of what kind of a poisonous institution they're actually joining, but this guy did. This guy is the prototype of the self-hating dominator, the builder of tyranny, the useful idiot who builds tyranny because he hates himself. He hates his race for whatever reason. Whatever his experiences were in life, he didn't process them from the standpoint of this is what this person did was wrong and that was wrong. He didn't have that knowledge. He's not very smart, clearly. So then he just basically views it through the viewpoint of race. And whenever that racist ideology was presented to him, it explained those things, explained neatly those traumas, and it compartmentalized those traumas in his life. And that's all it is. This is not complicated why people behave this way. Another thing that clearly made him like this, that made him the type of guy to go shoot up a mall, is because he was unable to relate to women. You could see he badly needed contact with women. He's over here. He has photos with waitresses, like he's taking pictures with a Hooters waitress, just like clearly you could tell from how he thinks he's not very creative, he's not very smart. He clearly can't really connect. He doesn't have an empathy. He's self-describes himself as a psychopath, right? So why would women want to be around him? So he can't get a woman, but clearly he has at least that physical craving for intimacy, and he can't get it because he's a weak little boy, right? Women don't want that. And that's basically what led him to it. But that's just a quick psychological breakdown of him. The reason I brought this story up is because I actually found the pictures. I found a picture from this shooting, and it's basically it's described as a pile of bodies, and that's essentially what it is, right? It actually is able to be found on Twitter. It was, at least, and you just see like it's about 5 or 6 people. One over there, one over here, and then a pile of like 3-4 people on top of each other, including a child, right? You could see their brains on the floor, just basically looks like a car crash scene from the shooting, clearly from the shooting, and just their brains on the ground, of a child laying on top of a man and then laying on top of somebody else. Pretty serious, gruesome stuff. Just by the way, when I talk about this, I consider myself hardened to imagery of extreme violence. Like, I've seen this stuff, so it doesn't really affect me. I'm not sensitive to it. It affects me, of course, internally and emotionally, but as far as shock value of extreme violence, it does not do much to me. So that's why I'm describing it as I am, of somebody who's seen a lot of stuff. And even for me, who's seen a lot of stuff, you never really get used to seeing a child like that. And I make this video and I start off this video with that because that has to reach people who aren't that exposed, overexposed, and even desensitized, who haven't been oversaturated with imagery of violence. Because I'm not saying that people need to see it, but you need to know about it. But who's talking about this? In this show, I'm really gonna earn this show's name of the most hardcore news show on earth, because this is hardcore topics, and nobody else is really breaking down this subject matter and tying it together like this. As far as I'm just talking about this episode of extreme violence, okay? It's not really happening anywhere else, but men need to see this. Not only men, but men especially, men who have families, because that's whose job it is right now. It's on us to stop this stuff, right? It's not just gonna stop. And we can't exist in a world like this and say nothing, right? Because we cannot be silent about it. But if you don't have the knowledge, then you're going to be silent because you don't even know what's happening. Okay. I'll say this. Elon Musk tweeted about this, and he tweeted something like, either this is a really bad psyop or this story gets weirder and weirder, talking about this mass shooting. And this is not to attack Elon too much, because he might just be drawing attention to this story to get people to look at it, Excuse me. In the end, I have nothing against Elon. I'm actually glad that these photos and the next video that I'll talk about is actually accessible on Twitter. Because as bad as it is, and as unfortunate as it is that people are sending other people this extreme imagery, like without their consent, which is wrong what they're doing, basically flooding them with like shock videos. At least I could have found this information on Twitter. You couldn't find it anywhere else, not on any of the Gore websites, other than actual like private rooms where this information is exchanged, rooms that I won't go into. Twitter is the place to find it. So it lives up to being that area of free speech that he claimed it was going to be so far. So not talking down to Elon, not attacking Elon, but what he said is talking about a psyop. As far what a psyop is a psychological operations, basically alluding to the fact that a lot of these shootings are occult sacrifices, psychological operations, hoaxes, right? I made a video about this, about the Covenant School occult sacrifice breakdown. So this is what he's referring to. But my counter argument to that is, why would it need to be a psyop? Are there not people like Mauricio? Are there not people just like this guy? There are so many. There are so many simple, crude, nationalistic thinking, my race is better than their race, us versus them. Are there not so many dumb, ignorant people like this who will go out and hurt others? This ideology is dominant. It's really significant. We've reached a point where psyops are no longer even necessary. The things that they would have had to do before, that the occult ruling class would have had to set up to get us to a certain outcome, they won't even have to do it. They're actually at a point where the occult rulers could step back and there's no more tyranny going on, right? They could actually take the chains off this planet, take the handcuffs off of all of us, and what would happen is we would enforce the tyranny on ourselves. They're at a point where because we have taken on their mindset, the system of tyranny will actually be enforced by ourselves, by the people. The people will enforce this on them. Okay, so we are no longer just the enslaved. We are now the enslavers of ourselves, and this is what would actually happen. So, and the reason I bring this up is because there are so many people now, the psyop hunters and the gematria specialists are going to be quick to add you up numbers of the Allen, Texas shooting and Mauricio, and they'll be quick to tell you that no one died. They'll tell you that these were all crisis actors. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the image. I'm seeing a child's brains on the ground, right? And these are people who are supposed to be on my side. I understand this, I understand why they're saying that. I understand how many psyops there have been. But now they're missing the picture. And they claim to be on my side. These people are not really on my side. Because now these guys are not going to talk about the psychological state of the people who actually do these things, psyop or not. Regardless of if this is a planned event, somebody actually had to go do this. Somebody actually had to go and shoot these people up, and there's video and audio evidence. And at a certain point, you're arguing like, was that image photoshopped, as they did with the Covenant shooting? At a certain point, you're talking about stuff that already happened. When we're on to the next thing, and you're not helping us at all, because the next one is going to happen, and then the next one is going to happen, and then the problems are not being addressed. And these people are sitting on the couch, but they're not talking like this. They're in comment sections. They're talking about just random bullshit. And they're not really going to be ready for the war when it kicks off. This is me preparing for the war. I'm giving you guys the information, showing what's going on here. We're already at war. We're already being attacked, philosophically, ideologically. We're being attacked. As you can see, what's happening to the children. So, you know, PSYOPs were just like a transitional stepping stone to get to this point. We're at a point now where we're gonna do this, right? There are already enemies within our ranks. This is like a virus. This ideology has been like a virus, the satanic ideology, which is just do whatever's best for me. More money, more this, you know. I want to get the best looking girl. I want to get the money. I want to get the best I can get, and just chill. And that's it. And only I matter. And then from that you get, my race is the best. All the other races are destroying America. It's all the immigrants. It's all that. Things were better back then when we were the dominant. You know, it's the bully dominant ideology. It's the ideology of the bully. And that's what it is. And people just want to be the bully. They don't want to confront the bully and stand up to him and remove him and remove the bully. They just want to be the bully. They want to be in his position. That's the fundamental difference between somebody like me and somebody like them. And I will draw a hard distinction between these people, because even in a world without tyranny, I wouldn't want to be an ally with these people, because this is the mindset that created tyranny. Even if we were free, you guys will fuck it up pretty quick. I'm looking for the real men and women. That's who my voice is for. That's who I'm going to relate to anyway. I'm not going to relate to the fake. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. The next video, which was this is a video that I saw last weekend that apparently came out of China. It's another example of extreme violence and gore, and this is just one of those shock videos, an animal abuse video, where a guy apparently in China has a kitten, right? So and then he has a blender, and then he puts the kitten in the blender, you know, feet first. Closes the lid, and then as he's recording all this, turns on the blender, right, starts chopping up the cat slowly, of course, you know, and basically as to prolong the torture of the cat. You see the cat, right, bleeding, the container's like filling up with blood. Of course the cat is trying to get out. I actually watched this with the audio off, but I imagine that there's a lot of screaming going on of the cat and stuff. And then this lasts for about a minute. The video that I saw was 55 seconds. And then he opens the lid. Cat is still alive, right? You see is disfigured, right? He's pretty messed up. Then he has like a plying tool and stuff, and then basically starts chopping at what is tough to even tell apart at that point what it is, but he seems to just remove the eyes. Happens pretty quickly, and then the video ends there. So this is just extreme animal abuse and gore, right? This has gained popularity recently. You know, gore videos have always been around, but specifically animal abuse, these animal abuse circles, this has been going on. But this is, you know, this video, how popular it got and how extreme it is, that it is a bit new, right? This is very new and shocking. But what we can get out, we can get a lot of things out of this video. But it's not an accident that it happens in China, and just want to talk about what life is like in China and what creates the mentality of a person like that, and why it has to do with tyranny. There's so much depravity in different parts of the world. Like me, who's seen a lot of these kind of videos, so many of them are out of these countries in Asia. They're out of these poor countries in Asia. Especially a lot of violence against women, either in Brazil or Middle Eastern countries, or these African and Asian countries. A lot out of Mexico and Latin America, especially the cartel violence. In India, they have the caste system, which is a totally satanic system where you basically have the lowest group of people seen almost like animals, right? The caste system basically sees them as the untouchables and a very satanic manifestation. But what you have in these different parts of the world, including China, is you got real low intelligence, low knowledge, just poor people who are ruled by fear and violence. And what about in China? So you see how authoritarian the government is there. It's totally ruling by fear and violence. They just, until recently, they had the one child policy. They actually tell you how many children you can have. They totally want to kill individuality. They want to kill the individual. Everybody has to look the same, has the same haircut. The government just has such a disgusting, authoritarian, iron grip on the people there. And when the one child policy was around, they wanted male children more than female children. Why? Because the males are actually easier to control. They want you in that dominator mindset. At 4 a.m. in China, you have the military music playing, and everybody does the same motions, and they have to sing the same song, and everything's about China and the nationalism, and the whole world is the enemy, and China's supposed to be the best. It's difficult to talk about things like this, because that person that did that to that animal, of course your first instinct is, wow, I would kill this person. I would totally tear apart a person like that for doing that. But ultimately, just like Mauricio, just like the mass shooter, this is just a little broken boy, clearly an abused child grown up to basically have such self-hatred, because all animal abusers are self-haters, and they're actually even bigger cowards than abusers of humans, because the only reason they abuse animals and not humans, because they don't have the power to do that to a human being. It's not putting a cat in a blender is not any different than torturing a human and putting him in a blender. To them, that's the best they could get their hands on. That's what's expedient for them. What do abusers and sadists come from? Extreme trauma and extreme self-hatred. It's self-hatred. So my rage and my anger, actually, like, I can't even fully get angry about this, because ultimately, if you put me in a room with that guy and I would tear him apart, what have I really done? Has justice really been done? Justice has not even been done, because that's just another victim of violence is no longer here, and didn't the original abuser has lived on, and you'll never get to that. You'll never go back in time and fix that point at which that happened, because you can't teach an animal abuser anything. You can't teach a rapist anything. These people have already forfeited their life. They're not even alive anymore. These aren't human beings, right? But then you got different problems. In China, you have the internet, and you have a very industrialized way, at least in the cities, where these people have access to the phone. They can post their video kind of like in America, and they have access to all the Western internet and the Western way of life in such a way that their life is hell, right? They work 70 hours a week or whatever it is, in a totally gray world where they're constantly in fear. They're constantly living under authoritarian rule, but then everybody has to kind of like pretend that everything's okay. And this is how Chinese people live. They have to always smile, they have to always put on this front that they're strong. And they live in a totally gray, depressing, pointless way of life. And that's what this comes from. They take a defenseless animal, and then they just do the worst thing they can to them. And that's the only type of attention they get. That person that did that, he's never gotten any attention in life until he did that and posted this video. And now the whole world basically talks about them. And that's what happens. This video got a lot of popularity, and now you've got, because of how popular and viral it got on Twitter, which is where I just like this. And that's how it is. There's a lot of copycat stuff always. And this is the big problem. This is what we're up against. We're up against child abuse, and this is what there's so much child abuse in China that it's not even reported, because to them it's just discipline. They say this is what discipline is. One study said it's something like 80% of families had extreme violence in the home, saying like what we would consider to be like extreme child abuse. That's just normal discipline to them. And that's slavery for you. That's tyranny and that's slavery. That's why I take this shit super serious. And I spend my Saturday nights doing stuff like this. Because it's coming, right? And none of us live in a bubble where we're insulated from this. Just because I got a nice apartment and I can have peace of mind for today, how can we really justify that to ourselves to just sit back and enjoy it? To just sit on that when this is happening. And we know it's happening, right? Now you know it's happening. If you don't sacrifice, if you say nothing, why live peaceful and happy when you're not going to raise a finger to bring awareness to this, right? But I'll really have to move on from that story because I want to say more, but I feel like I'm going in circles because it's a topic that's not very easy to talk about. I'm good talking about government and human psychology and all this, but it exceeds my levels of patience and basically of my abilities to this point. So let's go on. My third and last story is actually coming from Poland. Is about an 8-year-old who recently died. He was fighting for his life for like a month. They found him basically tied to like a furnace or something like that, like a heater, with arms and legs, fractures on his arms and legs that were there for about a month. Untreated burns, like burns all over his body. His face was burned. He's had hot liquids poured on him by his stepfather, right? Cigarettes put out on him for an extended period of time. Like he was going to school while this was going on, right? They have a teacher there. I saw the interview with the teacher. I saw the father who ultimately found him, and I even seen a picture of the mother with the face blurred and with the stepfather with the face blurred. This guy was 27, the stepfather that was doing this 8-year-old, and this was going on for an extended period of time, and nobody said nothing. The mother, when they asked her, they picked her up. They were interrogating her, and she said basically that she was afraid of the stepfather, and that's why she didn't say anything. I think she's full of shit. I think that is a piece of trash, and that's not even a woman. That's just a piece of trash, and you could tell when you look at her. Basically, this is another person who's in fear, and she cared. She was so self-hating that she cared about the stepfather and their relationship more than her own child. And then the stepfather, who is the ultimate self-hater, who would actually do this to this 8-year-old, right? So imagine my age, 27, doing that to an 8-year-old. How self-hating do you have to be? That's what he was doing, and that's what was going on. Prolonged torture. As far as that, it's up there with the worst, but it's not the worst case that I've seen of prolonged torture. You know, there have been stories that's worse. But you know what? You can actually see it. You can see pictures of this child. What they have in Poland is they blur the face and they don't give you the last name, which I think is bullshit. I think they should give the last name. Give the last name of these people. Everybody should have their first and last name and their face out there. Be responsible for your actions. And people are saying he's going to be held responsible in prison, that the people in prison are going to take care of him. Maybe, probably, but does it really matter? Does it solve anything? He's going to get what's coming to him, I guess. But before I get to what that person deserves, I just want to talk more about, again, isn't this what causes tyranny? Isn't this the big problem? Self-hatred, and to a degree we all have this. We're on the spectrum of this guy that did that to this child, broke his arms and legs, right? Just sadistic torture and violence over time. He's on the extreme of that, but we're on the low end of that, because knowing about things like that and not really getting engaged, not really putting our voice out there to try to change the world for real, not having even the sense that the way people treat each other is something off about it. I've felt this from early on in my life, that I was not getting enough dignity and respect from the world. Where is the sense of dignity and respect. People don't have this. People to a degree have bought the program that they actually are slaves. That's the whole thing I fight against. And that's really what it is. And these people were silent. And now, I've mentioned him. I'll talk about what I would do to him. Then the mother, I mentioned, piece of trash, total piece of trash. I actually have a video called No Wisdom and Justice about another piece of trash, the mother of a child that basically left the child for a whole weekend, not feeding the child until the child starved to death, her baby, right? That's baby, 17 months old or 19 months old. Basically left him in his crib to starve to death, right? And the reason I bring that up, I talked about this dynamic. This is not too far from where I live, about 30 minutes. I saw the image of the mother of this 8-year-old, and they're very similar to me. They look similar, even though this one had the face blurred out. They're slightly overweight, which is not to say that there's anything wrong with being overweight, but here's what it is. This is that satanic, materialist ideology that I talked about with the mass shooter. Deep down, these women hate themselves. They think they look ugly. I don't think that. The world maybe doesn't think that, but they think that. That's how poisoned their mind is, and you could tell that these are the kind of women that do this to their children. They happen to be not conventionally attractive and not treating their body well. I'm not that shallow to think that that's what your self-worth comes from, but clearly they are. And ultimately, when they did that to their child and they knew that was happening to their children, they didn't say anything. You forfeit your life. You're not a human being anymore. Move on. Move on with them. There's no point in even getting revenge on people like that or anything like that. Whether you put them in jail or you leave them, it really doesn't matter. They've already stopped being human. They've already forfeited their humanity. Okay, that's what people do when they abuse children. They abuse animals. They cease to be human beings right there. That's what self-hatred does. That is the force of what people call Satan. I know Satan, that concept in the Bible and in ancient occult schools goes deeper. But when you say the devil to me, Satan to me, that's really it. It's self-hatred, and it's what leads to death. That is a force. I've seen this force. Being somebody who used to be addicted to drugs, I know what this force is. I've seen this force at work. This is basically what it is. You do these things to yourself, you start damaging yourself more and more, and some people work themselves all the way up to the point that they hate themselves so much that they abuse children and animals. So I mentioned the mother, I mentioned the stepfather, but what about the teacher? There was a teacher that was a classroom of like 5 children. You know, this is like Poland. This is Poland. It's poor areas, not very, it's not like here in Chicago, okay? There's not very good. It's not a third world. They're not third world areas, but they're not very westernized. They're not very good areas with good sanitation, not areas with good public facilities and infrastructure is what I'm trying to say. So 5 kids in this little raggedy classroom, and this teacher saying she didn't know what was going on, that it was right there, basically putting on tears, which I'm gonna have to say they're fake tears, because I think this person's full of shit again. This person should not be a teacher. I know there's a lot of people like this. I know there's a lot of self-hatred in Poland, and that's what it is. This person was just silent. And people are just silent about all kinds of abuse. And nobody said anything. Even another portion of an interview I saw was with some kind of family members or neighbors. And they're saying, he was always yelling at the children, but we didn't know. We had no idea such a thing was happening. Fuck them. Fuck them too. These are the same kind of people. If you're not going to speak up about child abuse, fuck you. Like, you're down the street from these people. You think you're just being a good person and this stuff's not going to reach you. Well, it's so close now. You better make a clear separation and say, I'm not with that. Or you're basically going to be, like in the room. What if I was in the room while somebody's doing that? Obviously, you'll be treated like one of those people. you'll be an accomplice to that crime. And we're reaching levels when where there's so much knowledge, and this violence, these mass shootings is so prevalent. If you're not speaking out, it's getting to be like you're outside the door, like you're almost in the room with them. So I'm just reaching out to everybody. I'm appealing to everybody. Hey, it's time to get on the battlefield, because if you don't get out onto the battlefield's going to be in your front room, and you might not have enough courage then. Because I'm talking to people who don't have courage. Most people haven't built that courage within themselves, okay, to sacrifice for shit like this. But I said I would talk about what would happen if you put me in a room with a child abuser or an animal abuser. I said that revenge is not my motivation, that deep down I don't really want to hurt these people, because I know they come from trauma, and ultimately love is going to be the dynamic that heals this, and not more hatred, not more force, not more violence. But some people work themselves up to a point of being the dominator, the materialist, the bully. Some people work themselves into a point where they only understand violence. So any of these serial killers in history, any of these child abusers, any one of them, they've all been cowards. They might look big, they might be strong, but they've all been cowards. They've all been weak little boys. You put me with any of these people, with, Kemper, Gacy, Dahmer, Charles Manson, you put me in a room with any of these guys, I would tear them apart. Then we would see who the real barbarian is. I would do these things to them. I would tear these kind of people apart. But people aren't willing to go there. They're not willing to take themselves there. People are soft. People are cowardly. And it's not about being stronger or even being bigger than these people. Because I've been in a few fights. I've seen a few fights. And when it comes down to a fight between people who don't have combat experience and combat training and experience of being in fights, the person who wins a fight is who wants it more. And that's why all of these people are weak, right? And we're allowing this world, we're allowing them to inflict so much abuse and domination and violence, when these people would not actually be able to do this to a fully grown man, because they're actually weak. Even if they're bigger than you and stronger than you, their will to live is much smaller. They do not have a will to live because they're self-haters, right? So that's why, people who are good people who just want to live nice, who aren't abusers, we have the tendency a lot that we see domination and we see force and aggression and violence. We kind of want to step back and let them win, because we don't like this. We have respect and dignity, right? We don't like that area of violence and domination. And this is the same for me too, I've had to build that within myself and cultivate that within myself, that when I see that now, I see somebody being violent now, I see somebody being abusive now, I will force myself to say something, to stand up. And here's the kicker, here's the thing. I will even get aggressive, even when I don't feel aggressive. I'm going to get in these people's face, because like I said, people work themselves into the position of being a bully, and the only thing they understand is violence. So you know what? It's come to that point where we have to fight fire with fire sometimes. So all I'm saying is, these are not real men. These are little boys. But you cannot let them hurt other people. You cannot let them hurt women and children. So it's time for us to really step it up. And we gotta be ready to be those real barbarians. And that's when it's just like a pack of dogs. Because that's how they see themselves. They see themselves as animals, like a pack of dogs. So you gotta show them who the big dog is. And that's all it is. And it seems silly. To me, it's silly, because I actually, I'm trying to talk about philosophy and really planning to build a better world, to talk about human rights and building things and interpersonal relationships, to process our trauma, free ourselves from from addictions, to free ourselves from patterns of illusory thinking. And these people, they really understand, bark, 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 bite, bite, bite. These are just little fucking slow boys, unfortunately. But I'm going to repeat this again. At a certain point, bullies only understand violence. So that's what This Week in Tyranny needed to be about. It needed to be about how extreme the violence and gore has gotten this week. Okay? And the conclusion that I draw from that is well, we better step it up. We better be ready for that. When that happens in front of our eyes, we better not shit our pants. We better step it up. Be like, okay, this is time to fight now. It's that moment now. It's that moment of truth where we show who we are. And we make sure that the force of dignity and respect and love wins. Love wins. That needs to be the ending of this story. We cannot be non-participants. So that's the information that I've been exposed to, and I've had to make the video about this. A very hardcore video. It is what it is. I hope it could have gone better, but the important thing is to talk about it. This was never going to be a perfect episode, but I'd like to take this time to thank the people who send me new information, because there are a few people who send new stuff to me, like the story about the 8-year-old in Poland I would not know about. So thank you to the people who send me new information and bring new knowledge to me. Interestingly, they're mainly women. Doesn't that tell you something? Whether that be my family or outside of my family, the people who send me new information, they're women. And doesn't that just tell you the story? The men don't seem to care. Where are the real men? This is my first video, my third video. This is all stuff about men bringing themselves up from being on their knees, from being in their lowest point, climbing up from rock bottom and standing up into their power as a real warrior and a real family man, But a lot of the men I talk to on a daily basis, even recently, people I know, when you talk to males in society, the energy that seems to be coming from them is like, oh, I just wanna, I just wanna be comfortable. I just have to do this and this, and then I can relax. So everything's gonna be nice. I have this planned in my house, and I just have to do this and this, and they're just chilling. They're just these little boys that just want to go in their house and hide in the shell. And the people that I'm seeing that are assisting me as I'm trying to get on the battlefield and fight the war is the women. So doesn't that just put a cherry on top? Doesn't that punctuate this whole episode? This is all so-called men doing this. The males that are exerting their will on society, they're exerting the will of abuse and violence. Where are the men who are exerting their will of love, of family, and of real strength and courage? That's my question. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.
You either vote for the mumps or the measles. Whether you vote for the lesser of two evils, you vote for evil. Politics and God are not equal, but the education to get on guard is